Today's lesson is CrowdStrike glitch causes global tech outage. Hi, everybody. I'm Roger.
And I'm Mike.
And we've got a news story as we begin the month of December here. It's all about some sort of a technical glitch involving CrowdStrike, which is some sort of online platform. And this caused a lot of problems on the internet and in the world. It affected airlines and stores and things like that. So maybe you've heard about this, and it's something we need to be concerned about. We don't want this to happen again in the future.
Exactly. I mean, everyone knows that the world is very much connected through computers these days. And yes, we've probably all experienced some little glitch or problem, often when your software updates, when you get that newest version of the operating system for your phone or computer, or maybe it's a piece of software like business software you use a lot when they update, or sometimes even when you just turn the computer on, it's not working quite right. But when it affects thousands or millions of computers around the world, especially computers that are very much intimately connected with how hospitals are run, how airlines are organized, and how people's money is being moved around, it can cause major problems, major disruptions, and also a serious loss of confidence in people in these systems that we rely on so heavily these days. So in some ways, it's a good wake-up call to make us realize that, yeah, the software, the computer, the technology that's there that kind of running our lives, it's always in the background, and it usually operates quite fine and doesn't cause problems. But when it does, we will definitely notice our over-reliance probably on many of these systems. So let's have a look at this big story, how it started, who it affected, and what we might hope will happen in the future to avoid problems like this again. CrowdStrike glitch causes global tech outage. A recent global tech outage that disrupted countless business and government computer systems worldwide was caused by a software update glitch from cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike. The problem crashed computers, canceled flights, and threw hospitals into disorder, with Fortune 500 companies alone facing over $5 billion in direct losses. The glitch occurred when an update to CrowdStrike's Falcon software interacted poorly with Microsoft Windows, causing millions of devices to crash.
大家好，第一部分介绍动词 disrupt， 它的意思是扰乱、中断或是打断。例如 A major storm is expected to disrupt air travel throughout the region tomorrow. 预计明天一场大风暴将会扰乱该地区的航空旅行。或者 Production has been disrupted because the workers have gone on strike. 由于员工发动罢工，生产中断了。接着看到名词 update， 表示更新，也可以是最新消息或是新资讯的意思。例如 Our manager wants an update on the progress of the new project. 我们的经理希望了解新专案的最新进展。或是 Are you sure that you've installed the latest update? 你确定你已经安装到最新的更新了吗？下一个看到动词 interact， 它的意思是互动或是相互交流。例如 The museum has displays to interact with. 该博物馆有可供互动的展览。也可以说 Danny seldom interacts with his colleagues. Danny 很少跟他的同事互动。再来介绍名词 device， 表示装置、仪器或是设备。可以说 Devices like cell phones and tablets are not allowed in Mr. Dunn's classroom. Dunn 老师的课堂上不允许使用手机和平板等装置。又或者说 I own 3 electronic devices. 我有3个电子装置。
Right. Okay, so let's begin our explanation by talking about the title here. We've got CrowdStrike, and we have a glitch here, which is like a problem, a malfunction, usually with computers, and it has caused a big outage in global technology. An outage, of course, means you don't have this thing, you suddenly lose it, and you need it. Like a power outage, for example, that can happen sometimes during earthquakes, and that can be a bit of a hassle. We can't use our devices. We have to go look for our candles and our flashlights and things like that. Well, here in the first paragraph it says, a recent global tech outage that disrupted countless business and government computer systems worldwide was caused by a software update glitch from cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike. Okay, this is a very long sentence and it gives us a lot of information. So let's break it down into smaller parts here. First of all, we're talking about a recent global tech outage. Okay, so there was a stop in service regarding technology, internet service, and things like that. So this glitch, this outage, disrupted countless business and government computer systems all over the world. So if something disrupts something, it interrupts something. But here for me, the word disrupt means you kind of interrupt it in a more violent and unpleasant way. Like, for example, the sound of the construction next door disrupted our meeting and we had to reschedule.
Okay, so it disturbed, it interrupted, it caused problems in the normal operation and the normal running of things. So a software update glitch is what caused it. It came from the cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike. Cybersecurity, meaning security on the internet, keeping not your computer physically safe, although that might be part of it, but more keeping your computer's software safe from viruses and things like that. Software is basically programs, written data that allows your computer to do certain operations. So if you're playing a game, if you're using WhatsApp to communicate, if you're using a shopping network, if you're using a browser just to go onto the internet, you're using software of some kind. So not the hardware, not the actual monitor or CPU or motherboard, the physical parts of the computer. This is the informational part of the computer. And what we know, what we sort of deal with every day are programs and apps and things like that. And an update is basically when they just give you the newest information. So a news update will be, this is what we've learned in the last 30 minutes on that big story. All right, so it's giving you the latest little bit of information, keeping you up to date, keeping you current with what is going on right now. And we also can have updates with things like software, because of course, as people use the software, they'll discover little problems with it, or they'll add services to it, add functions to it. So to get the newest version of that software, you have to get an update. I think most programs and most software these days, they update automatically, maybe every once a week or so, or when a new version of that software comes out, your computer will add. So you'll have version 1.093, and there's maybe been 93 updates of that popular software since it was first launched. And so the problem, this update that caused the glitch, the problem crashed computers, canceled flights, and threw hospitals into disorder, with Fortune 500 companies alone facing over $5 billion in direct losses. Wow. So it caused major problems.
Right, it crashed computers. Computers broke down all over the world. You could not use your computers. It also canceled flights because airlines are dependent on their computers to schedule flights and things like that. They get information about their flights, and this glitch caused the crash, and therefore the flights had to be canceled. And then hospitals were thrown into disorder. Of course, doctors and nurses have to rely on computers to take care of their patients, and if the information is simply not there, they have lots of problems there. They can't treat their patients properly. People probably got in big trouble there. They probably died even as a result of that. And we've got Fortune 500 companies, some of the most successful companies in the world. They faced over $5 billion in direct losses as a result of this. Maybe that particular cybersecurity firm has to compensate them in some way.
Okay, so yes, I think especially in the UK, a lot of hospital visits were canceled. So the whole hospital scheduling book got completely wiped out. So people would show up and the doctors wouldn't know when they're seeing their patients and all sorts of problems like that. Airlines, of course, had airports filled with angry customers who couldn't get their planes to their destinations. Major problems. It says the glitch occurred when an update to CrowdStrike's Falcon software interacted poorly with Microsoft Windows, causing millions of devices to crash. So basically, these two programs, Microsoft Windows, which of course is an operating program, it kind of runs your computer and allows it to do things, allows it to keep that software running and actually make it work. It interacted poorly with CrowdStrike's software called Falcon. So that might be a cybersecurity program. You buy Falcon to protect your computer from hackers. You have Windows on your computer to make Falcon and your games and all your other things actually work. But when they can't communicate with each other, when they're yelling at each other in a language that neither understands, basically, in a computer way, big problems happen. So the software from one company interacted poorly. It didn't connect well. When things interact, they're sort of communicating. They're joining together in some kind of activity, in some kind of communication maybe. If you speak to someone, you're interacting with them in that way. Or even if you go to a store and I buy something from you, I'm interacting with the people in the store. They're doing something for me. I'm doing something with them. We're doing it together. So in this case, though, the programs, they didn't communicate very well. It was very difficult for them to understand the language that the other was speaking, causing the computer to crash, causing millions of devices to face big problems. When we say a device, it's a machine that does something.
Exactly. It could be your smartphone. It could be your iPad. It could be PC or whatever. These are different kinds of devices. It could also be electric devices in your home, like a toaster or a microwave oven. We can consider those devices. But when we see the word device here, I usually think immediately of electronic devices like communication devices, your smartphone, your computer, etc., etc. Okay, we're at the end of the first part of our lesson for today. Let's move on now to the second part, and we'll be right back to talk about it.
CrowdStrike's report on the problem revealed that a bug in its testing system allowed the faulty update to be released. Although the update was rolled back within 90 minutes, the damage was significant. The banking and healthcare sectors were hit particularly hard, with estimated losses of $1.15 billion and $1.94 billion, respectively. Meanwhile, airlines such as Delta and American faced major disruptions as thousands of flights were canceled.
第二部分看到形容词 faulty， 它的意思是有缺陷的或是不完美的。例如 If the product is faulty, the customer should be given a free replacement. 产品若有缺陷，顾客应该要可免费更换新的。再看一个例子 Cars with faulty brakes should be inspected immediately. 刹车有缺陷的车应该要立即检查。
Okay, so again, we've got this cybersecurity firm or company by the name of CrowdStrike. And CrowdStrike's report on the problem revealed that a bug in its testing system allowed the faulty update to be released. Okay, a bug here does not mean an insect like a cockroach or a beetle or whatever. It just means there's something in the computer program that's not supposed to be there. It's a fault, and therefore it allowed the faulty update to be released. If they did not have the bug in the testing system, then it would have been all right. This is a faulty update. If something's faulty, it's got a problem, it's got a flaw, and if you use it, it's going to cause problems.
Exactly. Faulty being an adjective, and we can also talk about a fault, a mistake, an error, a glitch, a bug. These are all very similar terms, but a bug would be one of these mistakes in a piece of computer software. But it's still a glitch, it's still a mistake, it's still a problem. And so these update basically didn't work. It says although the update was rolled back within 90 minutes, the damage was significant. So that update was probably launched, it was probably released, and all the computers running CrowdStrike Falcon software decided, oh, there's an update, there's a new version, I better get that, I better update myself to be the newest, best version of it. But it suddenly caused all these problems, but it was still there live, sort of running around causing chaos for 90 minutes. And computers around the world that were all using this CrowdStrike software before people back at CrowdStrike headquarters, I guess, noticed these problems and got news of these angry computer users saying, hey, your update has crashed my computer. It's killed my computer. It doesn't work anymore. I've lost all my work. And so they rolled back the update. That's basically like they pulled it back. They tried to cancel the update. They stopped it from going out to more computers because it had already affected in a very bad way the computers that had chosen to run the update. So even though it was only out there for about 90 minutes, it still infected thousands or millions of computers. The damage was significant. It was a bit too late to not cause problems. The banking and healthcare sectors were hit particularly hard, with estimated losses of $1.15 billion and $1.94 billion, respectively. That's interesting. I guess CrowdStrike Falcon software is very popular among banks and institutions like that, and also among hospitals and doctors' offices and places like that. That's why these sectors, these sections or areas or types of the economy, you could say also, were hit particularly hard. They were particularly affected in a negative way. Okay, so there was a lot more damage to computers running in banks and hospitals and other places than compared to computers running in service. Restaurants and hotels maybe don't use the software as much as hospitals and banks do. And if they were trying to guess or estimate the financial losses, right, the problems and how much that cost the companies to fix these problems, it was $1.15 billion for all the banks that were affected and $1.94 billion for all of the hospitals and healthcare sectors that were affected, respectively. So if we follow that sentence, and we were talking about, the first part was about the banks and the second part was about the hospitals. If we follow the order of that, then we also follow the order when we're looking at these financial numbers, these numbers here, the financial damages.
Right, and we do use the word respectively to simplify the sentence. We could say the banking sector was hit particularly hard with losses of $1.15 billion, and the healthcare sector was hit particularly hard with losses of $1.94 billion. But that's a long sentence, so we simplify it by using the word respectively. The banking and healthcare sectors were hit particularly hard with the losses of $1.15 billion and $1.94 billion, respectively. For a simpler example, I could say Dick and Jane like hamburgers and pizza, respectively. So that means Dick likes hamburgers and Jane likes pizza. And meanwhile, at the same time, airlines such as Delta and American faced major disruptions as thousands of flights were canceled. So if people were trying to travel, their trips were disrupted and they were probably not happy campers. Okay, we're at the end of the second part of our lesson for today. Here comes the third part.
The incident demonstrates the risks of single points of failure in global IT systems. CrowdStrike has promised to improve its testing processes to prevent similar future incidents. Nonetheless, the outage has fueled concerns about the heavy reliance on a few key players in the cybersecurity market and calls for better planning in the tech industry.
第三部分我们看到副词 nonetheless 指的是尽管、然而或是不过。举例来说 Stewart has faced many challenges. Nonetheless, he fought through them and achieved his goals. Stewart 面临许多挑战，然而他奋力战胜他们并达成目标。又或者说 The steak was a little undercooked, but it was excellent nonetheless. 牛排不太熟，不过还是很棒。最后看到名词 reliance， 它表示依赖、依靠，也可以是信任的意思。可以说 When conducting research, my reliance on the internet is very strong. 在进行研究时，我对网络的依赖非常强烈。最后一个例子 The country's reliance on development aid has increased over the last few years. 该国对发展援助的依赖在过去几年有所增加。
All right, we are back looking at how the CrowdStrike software update caused chaos around the world. It says the incident demonstrates the risks of single points of failure in global IT systems. Yeah, this kind of incident, this kind of situation that we saw with this update and the chaos that it caused when all the computers crashed, it demonstrates, it clearly shows as an example to learn from. That's what you do when you demonstrate. You show someone how to use something or how to do something in a way that can be understood understood in a way that is instructional and educational. So it demonstrates, it shows in a very clear way that we should learn from the risks or the dangers of single points of failure in global IT systems. Okay, a single point of failure in this case was basically millions of computers using the same software, and one update to that piece of software caused these millions of computers to have problems. It wasn't multiple things. It wasn't this computer with this software and this hardware in this country or something like that had problems. No, it was one thing caused a huge problem right around the world. That one thing being this CrowdStrike software update that caused these glitches. And so that is a demonstration of how even though these computers seem to be everywhere and they're connected and they're often running very, very well and very conveniently, when they have a problem, it can very, very quickly spread. CrowdStrike has promised to improve its testing processes to prevent similar future incidents. Maybe they didn't test this update carefully enough, they launched it a little too soon, and they hadn't had time to do the quality control and the quality assurance that we would expect. And so big problems started. So maybe they'll be very careful, much more careful in the future.
They better make that promise indeed. And nonetheless, even though this is the case, the outage has fueled concerns about the heavy reliance on a few key players in the cybersecurity market and calls for better planning in the tech industry. So we all kind of learned a lesson from this. We shouldn't rely too heavily on just a few key players, a few key companies. We need to spread ourselves out. We shouldn't put all our eggs in one basket. We shouldn't have this reliance on a few key players. Reliance just means when you depend on somebody, and if you don't have them, you're in big trouble. And yes, indeed, these are ways we can solve the problem in the future. Okay, that brings us to the end of our explanation. Here comes Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第二部分最后一句提到，达美航空和美国航空等航空公司面临重大扰乱，数千个航班被取消。文中它用到 faced major disruptions 来表达面临重大扰乱。那么 face 当动词，它有面临、面对的意思，像是面临困难啊、面临挑战等等。当我们要表达某人面对困难的事情时，可以用主动的用法 somebody faces something 来强调某人去迎接、面对并处理某事，这就带有主动正面迎击的语义。或者是也可以用被动用法 somebody be faced with something， 这在强调说是在无奈、不情愿、被动的情况下面临或遭遇了某个困境。那我们来造两个例句。The team is faced with a new challenge. 那个团队遭遇了一个新的挑战。They aren't ready to face the challenge. 他们还没准备好面临挑战。好，那这边也补充两个跟 face 有关的用法。第一个补充的是 face the music， 这是指为自己说过的话或是做过的事承担后果，面对现实情况做好可能遭受到批评或处罚的准备。那第二个补充的用法是 face it，或者是 let's face it， 这是表达正视事实吧。那这个惯用语是用来带出某件令人不悦或是不太想承认的事实，那可以用来表达说面对现实吧，实话实说吧。像 let's face it， we don't have any chance to win， 面对现实吧，我们没有任何赢的机会。好，看到课文第三部分最后一句，他提到这次大宕机引发了对网络安全市场中过度依赖少数几个主要参与者的担忧，并呼吁科技业进行更好的规划。文中他用到片语动词 call for 来表达呼吁。那我们来看它的常见用法。好，第一个 call for 它可以表达要求、公开呼吁。那么常见的用法是 call for 加上名词，或者是 call for somebody to 加上原形动词。举例来说 ，Numerous celebrities have called for gun control。许多名人公开呼吁枪支管制。好，那第二个我们可以用 call for 去表达需要，这时候它意思就跟 require 差不多。那它的受词可以是人或者是事物，例如 This job calls for computer skills。这份工作需要电脑相关技能。那我们再看一个例句是 You got the job that calls for a celebration。你得到那份工作啦， 那这当然要庆祝一下咯。好，那么以上是今天重点整理，我们回顾今天单字吧。
Disrupt. A loud noise disrupted the meeting, and everyone turned to see what caused it. Software. It took Olivia a few hours to learn how to use the new software. Update. The update fixed several bugs in the computer's operating system. Interact. When mixed, the two chemicals will interact to create a powerful reaction. Device. Mrs. Hayes uses a medical device to monitor her heart rate. Demonstrate. This study demonstrates the impact of high temperatures on plant growth.
Discussion Starter starts now!
It's time now for our discussion starter, and the question is, in a world that heavily relies on computers and the internet, what other problems could arise if another major tech outage occurs?
One problem that might come up is people going to concerts won't be able to buy drinks. This happened to me, actually. Not too long ago, I was at a concert in Canada, and I wanted to buy a drink before the show began, and they said, nope, the computers are down all across Canada. We can't sell you any drinks. Here is a cup of warm water. So I was standing there with money in my pocket, a credit card that couldn't work, but cash that did, and still, for about the first hour, everyone in the concert was drinking cups of warm water until they could get the computers to work, even though the fridges were full of cold drinks.
That is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I guess we rely on computers too much, but another outage, such as a power outage, could bring a variety of issues if we don't have our electricity. My goodness, lots of things could not run. The electric buses, the MRT, elevators, we would all be in big trouble if those things could not work.
Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Mike.
I am Roger.
See you next time.